you are using or the technology, there is tremendous opportunity. So what is your L&D challenge or opportunity that you're facing? So uh, we would request you to go to your browser, type in menti.com, enter this code, and start putting in your sharing your thoughts about what is your innovation challenge or opportunity. Menti.com. Can you share the Menti screen as well for the participants? So those of you who missed noting down the code, it's also there up on the top of the screen. If you see 701421, we would request you to enter the code. So no ready L&D material, productivity, new business segment. Shape the role of L&D, new business segment, redesigning learning nuggets. Okay. Mindset change. Lack of competent staff. Shape the role of L&D. Career path. Lack of funds. Cost. Okay, so we have quite a bit of inputs that have come in out here. So we can just stop Menti and we can get back to our slide share because uh, uh, we can just show that snapshot out here if it's possible. Uh, 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 Hamza, could you do that? Yeah. So most of the stuff that we are talking out here, believe me, design thinking has a solution for most of the areas. Even where someone has mentioned lack of funding, uh, design can help you build a solid business case, which you can take to the management for them to loosen their purse strings. So it's all about how you position it to the management. I mean, there have been so many times in uh, my roles when I was working with established organizations like Wipro, Siemens, and many others. Uh, if I have taken a business case to my CEO, I've always come out with a funding if the business clicked with them. So it's about how good can you make that. Thank you. We'll get back to the presentation, please. So as one of the prime things is about creating learning nuggets, those bite-sized content. Let's look at the current approach with most learning professionals use, which is the ADDIE learning design. which goes as analysis, design, develop, implement, evaluation. Sorry. But one of the problems of this traditional approach is that it's a very rigid process. It doesn't give you flexibility. I mean, you have to complete one and then move to the other. There is not much scope for employee feedback. And by employee feedback, we actually mean the learner feedback. You've just taken a download from the senior management, you create something and you just go and dish it out to the learners. But it doesn't give you that flexibility of incorporating their feedback with a prototype that you would have created and refine the solution. And the whole process is very slow because of the number of players that get involved, uh, the right subject matters coming into play to come and help you with it. So the whole process becomes very slow. So with this, we are going on to another poll about your experience with design thinking. So can we just have the poll up, please? Okay, so we have 80%, 81% of people who have voted. So we will end the poll and we're just sharing the results. So we have 46% of the audience who says that we've heard the term, but you don't really know what it means. And about 31% say that you've heard a little bit of the design. And there's one person who has done design thinking in the past. Maybe you could just type in your chat your name so that once we are through with the presentation, you could also share your experience and learning from applying design thinking in your project, and even the one who is currently applying at your workplace. Thank you. Thank you for taking the call. Just change the slide. Right. So, what is this whole mysterious word called design thinking all about? So, design thinking is a complex problem solving approach. It is an innovation approach. It's a framework. It is a mindset. There are different ways in which design thinking is described. It's a tool, it's a methodology, and eventually it's also a culture. But we'll come to that later. So what it works is it puts the human being, the people at the center, to really understand what is it that they are grappling on a daily basis. Takes in the perspective of different people, because even in your learning ecosystem, you would have someone who's just a fresher, someone with a few years of experience, someone who's an expert. Now, the learning needs of each individual will vary for the same topic. Now, so if suppose you are trying to create a program on artificial intelligence, the way a beginner, the inputs that the beginner would need would be very different from an expert and someone who is at an intermediate level. And it's also about looking at what is the experience that you would like to give to that human being. Just to help you correlate, I mean, there are so many Indian banking sites if you go to. You try and open up from a mobile handset. You will see that they are not aligned with the form factor of a mobile phone. And the screen goes haywire. And it's very difficult for you to do the transaction. So similarly, imagine now, suppose you're enabling the content and someone is trying to view it from a mobile device. what would be the experience of that individual to view that content out here? Or would it be something the person would say, wow? So it's about creating that wow experience every time. Because if you have an inconsistent experience, the feedback would also be very mixed from the audience. So it's important that every time you create an exceptional experience. So it's important for you to understand what is it that the learner wants at different stages of the journey, or what is it that the business wants uh, uh, from you. And at the same time, keeping in mind the business, because at the end of the day, the business needs to make money, to invest in the programs, to invest in people. So it's absolutely important. So it brings in three factors. It brings in the user desirability, it looks into the technology feasibility, and it also looks at the business viability. While doing all of this, we also say that fail fast, learn fast, fix fast. Because the whole method is very iterative. As we explore a little further, you'll understand what is it that I'm talking about. So design thinking, now if you go and do a quick search on Google, you'll see uh, some will put just empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test. Many might not have the implement component. There is 3I from IDEO. There is double diamond of 4D. So there are each are different approaches, but it's basically one and the same. It's just English and the way certain aspects have been clubbed under one heading. So that's all. That is the difference between the different approaches. It's English. It's just to say, okay, I'm different, so I'm using a different nomenclature. So what this talks about is empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of the different stakeholders, your learner, the business, your own self, your partners, to try your technology partners, to try and understand what is the need they have. Once you have understood the need, you might try to identify what is the solution that you're trying to solve. What is, so you define the problem that you're actually, because you've got so many problems or so many inputs from so many people, now you converge and you say, okay, now let me define what is the actual problem that I'm trying to solve. Having done that, you start ideating. You start looking at different solutions, and then you shortlist the solutions based on different criteria, and then you start building prototypes. Now this prototype, you test it with the audience for whom you're creating the solution, the people who said they have a problem. And you take their feedback, refine the solution. Refine the solution till the time you reach at something we call as MVP, a minimum viable product, a minimum viable solution that you have that you can launch. And the whole iteration process goes on throughout the journey as long as that solution has a shelf life. The minute it reaches obsolescence, you would be looking at a newer problem, a newer set of problems, and trying to create a new solution. So the advantage of design thinking over the traditional process is it's flexible, because it is taking in diverse perspectives. It is centered around the user. So you take the user inputs and you put that, and you're also able to take timely feedback from them so that you can create a solution which is closer to what they are looking at. And because the whole process is iterative, it ensures that it is fast, you're able to quickly get results, and you're able to co-create a solution in a very short period of time. So in design thinking, primarily you'll see there are three modes of thinking: open, explore, and close. Open is when you're opening up your minds. You have come across a complex challenge that you need to solve. So now you need to, suppose say someone has come to you and say, you know what, uh, we do a lot of fresh hires every year, but the fresh hires take a lot of time to start becoming productive. It's almost a year before they are productive. So should we do fresh hires or should we pick up people from the market and save time? Suppose if this was a problem, so now you're starting to open up to understand what is the actual problem. And then you start exploring, you start diverging, you start looking at the problem from different perspectives. You try to understand the inputs of the different stakeholders. And once you feel that yes, you have enough inputs, you're ready to start closing in, where you say, okay, now I start converging all the inputs, all the data that I've collected, which could be both a qualitative or quantitative data, and then let me start making some decisions so that I can move forward. So this is the typical way in which a design thinker thinks, where I think like a designer to eliminate all the unwanted and take the ones that matters most. The word of caution out here is you can't open and close at the same time. You can only do either or. It's not either and. So it's important for you to understand that applying these principles helps you make tremendous shifts in the mindset of people. So design thinking says, come on, don't come and tell me I can do this, I can do that, and makes false promises. Can you come and show me a prototype that it is possible? We have a lot of ideas, but how can I convert that idea into an actual innovation, a working innovation? How can I convert it into a solution which can be used? Because I do a small ideation session. We all did the umbrella challenge. We came up with hundreds of ideas. But how many of those ideas have actually got converted into a realistic solution out there in the market? It's just how we use it. That's a different perspective altogether. It also says that, hey, I need to start experimenting. I can't always be very brisk averse and say, no, I will not try new things. I'll stick to the old ways of doing things. I'll only use tried and tested solution. I mean, there are so many times when we go, when a customer, one of your stakeholder, prospective vendors might approach you, you'd say, okay, where else have you done it? So the vendor might say, hey, you know what, this is a new concept. So we're just trying it out for the first time. And this is the use case that we have. So we have a paper prototype. I'm showing you how it can work. But you'll have to apply and then you will get to see the results yourself. So it's about getting out of that old and willing to experiment, willing to try out something new. It's just not about understanding, oh, I understand that, you're working from home and you still have to, apart from doing 10, 12 hours at work, you still have to learn some new skills. Plus, you also have to, do household work. You have to put yourself in your shoes and see how is that content going to be delivered or made available to that person, that with all the existing challenges that they have, they can still learn and start delivering to meet the demands of the business. Traditionally, we always said, the solution has to be perfect. We'll only launch it once it's perfect. But design says, hey, as long as we've reached a stage where it's that minimum viable solution, launch it. We'll keep refining it. But we can't wait for the perfect solution, because by then things would have changed and business would say, we need reskilling in some other new area. And here, design thinking is not about broadcasting. It's about engaging into conversations so that we can learn from each other. Design thinking primarily focuses on outcomes. So often at work, we are used to output, a slide deck. We have created a PPT which we will be using for the workshop. We have created a storyboard. We have written an email that we can mail to the participants. We have a video. Now, these are all outputs. Design thinking is not bothered about for me, and from a learner, from a L&D perspective, the outcome is, have I able to create a new capability, a set of skill sets or and which can give result to the business. So it's about not just any outcome, but it's also about giving radical outcomes because I'm transforming the way something is being done. That is what design thinking is all about. So now let's look at some of the tools. So what we would be doing is we showed you empathy to implement, and at each stage there are different design tools that we would use. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of some of the messages that we can use. While the examples that I'll be walking through will be more from uh, for a L&D professional for creating course content and a learner experience, but you can even apply it for the strategy of the L&D department. And this is how a strategy blueprint typically looks like. Uh, so I'm moving to the next slide because I have an example. So if it was my consulting firm, which is offering consulting solutions to companies using design thinking, service design principles, and if I were to fill the strategy map, so the challenge reads as what problems are we trying to solve and what obstacles do we need to overcome. So what we have written is learners are absent from design process. We don't know enough about them and their situations. Instead, we rely on SMEs telling us about the learners. So in our case, the SMEs is L&D professionals. It can be difficult to get clients to define business outcomes. Sometimes the problem or opportunity is not clearly defined. So we still are very unclear. It's still because either the real problem that we are trying to solve or the problem is somewhere else. It can be difficult to get clients to define business outcomes sometimes. We have SMEs driving the design rather than learners. Too much content goes into the solution and struggle to get buy-in or reinforcement as well as to plan out for implementation. So what you see is we get into each aspect and we put in as to how is it that what are the aspirations that we would have in with our clients, what would be the areas that we would like to focus on, what are the different guiding principles, what are the different activities that we would be doing, and most important, for us to get success, what would be the outcomes? The number of awards that we win or the client wins, volume of repeat business that is rooted in satisfaction, because the process and outcomes are both achieved by the client. So with this, we move on to our design section. Can you just help me with the slide change? Again, it's stuck up. I mean, these remotes. Okay. So now we said, we need to go back to the previous one, please. Yeah. So any design project requires a cross-functional people coming together to solve the problem. Because it just can't be the learning and define L&D professional trying to do everything on. So suppose you have a request, as we said about, we need people ramped up faster. We need you to redo our onboarding programs. So if you look at it, there are diverse set of people we would require. We would require new hires, that is the learners. We would require program designers. We would require IT teams because they would be looking at the systems and the infrastructure that you need to have in place. You would require the department, the business people, the practice, their managers or their bosses or whatever you want to call them. You would require to have L&D professionals. You would also need the business head who would be the sponsor, who is willing to give the money for this revamping the onboarding program. So if you look at it, we'll be just quickly running through this, kind of just gives you an example how design works. Uh, so what are the current challenges with the onboarding process? So here, if you look at, we take both the stakeholder as well as the learner perspective. Now you can get this only when you have a diverse audience working together with you, who can work and share their inputs without the fear. Because often, if you say something, if you open up mouths, the organization has a culture that they might be rebuked, or they may lose their jobs, or so many things might be playing in their minds. But it's important that you get everyone's perspective and everyone's frank inputs. You may also find that while you're doing this process, you may find some outliers, and outliers might come up with something very interesting which would not have come from the majority of the audience with whom you have interviewed. In fact, as designers, we love outliers because they really point out something which otherwise other people in the system have not been able to share with us. So having done all this whole stakeholder gathering exercise, we are now going into that empathy phase. In fact, whatever we did out there for understanding the stakeholders is also very much part of empathy. But whenever a design project comes by, first is the team formation, and then getting to understand the different perspectives. And then as designers, we decide what is the further digging that we need to do. So empathy is the phase in which we said we diverge, we open up, we go deeper into understanding uh, about what is it that's really bothering the user. And this helps us create something what we call as a learner persona. So here, for example, we have a learner persona of a Tina Arora. So Tina is a sales professional, and she needs to get into calls with, this is for a pharma company, and she needs to get into a calls with doctors, so anywhere between 30 seconds to 4 minutes, and within that she has to convey whatever she needs to convey to them. So she needs help as to how can L&D help her. We have highlighted some sections in blue. She's a seasoned pro and prides herself on hitting or exceeding goals while staying compliant with the organization. Her challenge is figuring out how to incorporate new messaging into existing ones and staying within a 30-second call length. So you can imagine the bite-sized content that she requires. Building confidence after formal training on new messaging, product, clinical trial info, etc. Is incentives. So she definitely wants to max it. Capturing a day in her life also helps you understand, right from the time she wakes up in the morning to she goes to sleep, uh, what does she do? What are the different activities she's engaged in? And how busy her schedule is? And what are the free times that are in her slots? So for us, in fact, a learner persona is what we call as a gold mine for us to really understand our learner, which gives us insights into their preferences, into the challenges that they are facing, what is it that they want from the program. We also have another tool that we call as empathy maps. So here we try to understand what is the learner thinking, feeling, seeing or hearing, doing, what are the pains and challenges and motivators. So again, our discussions with the learner helps us to understand this perspective. So ideally, when you're trying to create a learner persona or an empathy map, we suggest that at least you should have met with 6 to 8 professionals, and also try if the population in your organization, say you have 100 sales guys, and say 30% are freshers and uh, 40% are intermediate experience and 30 are pros, then you need to consider them as 3 different profiles and not consider one single generic profile for all 3 of them. Because in that case, again, the solution that you would create would be pretty skewed. So while you're getting started, it is always start with the population where the population is on the higher side, so that they stand to benefit most, while you're parallelly working towards creating learning programs for the others as well. So we have just filled up a sample map again, so which gives you an idea about what does this person think, feel, do, what are the move on into what we call as the learner journey map. Sorry for this being a small screen, but when we try to fit in content, typically we use online whiteboarding tools called either Miro or Miro when we are doing virtually. And if we are working in a physical environment, these would be huge canvases on which you would be working on. Uh, so minimum, it would be the size of a chart paper, so that it's very clear for you to start working on these inputs. So you'd see that there are different stages, notice, commit, learn and practice, repeat and elaborate, reflect and explore, sustain over a period. So you'll see out here, you've incorporated perspectives from a learner perspective and the other from a organization or management perspective. And you clearly see what is it that they need to do at each stage to start delivering. It also gives you inputs as to what is it that they need or what are the challenges that they are facing, because you can then start looking at solutions. So you could look at obtain number of, there are many more tools that we use, but these are the 3 primary tools, the persona, the entity map, and the journey map that gets created in the entity phase of design. And we do a quick poll. So the poll says that when your customers or colleagues approach with you with a problem, how often do you think that it's the right problem, or you require to reframe the problem, or it's significantly some reframing is needed? So we just have the poll, and if we can quickly have uh, your responses. Okay, so we'll end the poll and share the results with you. So we see that significant portion of people understand that some amount of reframing is needed or significant reframing is needed. And 2 people have basically said essentially it's the right problem. Now, the defined phase of design thinking is all about solving the right problem. So how do you define the problem that you want to solve? Because you've spoken with different learners, you've prospective learners, you've spoken with the stakeholders, you have your own inputs, insights, and you now need to figure out what is it the problem that you actually want to solve. And why is this very important that we take into consideration? Because you have to understand there's a lot of energy, money, efforts that goes into creating a solution. And if we are solving a wrong problem, everything goes down the drain. And we can be assured that we'll never get the next investment available from it. So now with the power of design thinking, you can change it, because this is a place where you again converge, where you start closing in, because you have first diverged out, got all the information, and then you start converging to define the problem, because now you're trying, okay, what are the access barriers for my stakeholders from different perspectives, physical, behavioral, time, awareness, so on and so forth. And then I also look at exploring the problem a little further from different perspectives, from the perspective of the learner, business experience, the organization as a whole, keeping today as well as my future needs in mind. And then we typically frame what we call as how might we statements. So this is where action, so you want to achieve something, is where the action is you want to redesign, encourage, improve, solve, do something. So what is the action that you want to achieve? Who is the subject? So who is the audience for whom you're designing? And what is the outcome that you want to achieve? And you create something like this. So how might we empower individual employees, teams, and leaders to learn and develop key capabilities? These statements, you need to ensure that it's not too broad, at the same time not too narrow. So going back to that ramping up problem of new hires, how might we design a solution that lets new hires become productive in 6 months' time? How might we eliminate bottlenecks with senior associates and complex work? Because one of the findings was that senior people spend too much of time with the rookies, and as a result, uh, they have to put in extra overtime, and they have to put in extra hours, and they are unhappy about it. The next phase is ideating, where you start brainstorming for prospective solutions. While you're brainstorming for solutions, as a designer, you also need to keep into account aspect of the solution. How will the uh, learners interact? It could be with people, it could be with machine. Uh, what should be the voice modulation? What should be the tone of the message, etc., etc., etc. So these are also different solutions from a L&D perspective that you need to keep into account while you're building the solutions. And then you create a prototype. We're going to be sharing with you a small document, creating a prototype. So design is about action. So what you're going to do is curate a content. So we're just sharing the document on the chat screen with you. So if you can just share the prototyping document, Hamza. So while he's sharing the document, let me explain what is it that you need to do. So you can quickly do Google and select a blog. So the exercise is you have to choose a piece of content that might be interesting to your colleague, because your colleague told you that he or she has a problem, some learning that they need to do. So you need to identify a piece and reflect as to why is this content beneficial to that colleague. What will you do differently as a result? Because if it benefited you, then it might benefit that person. But if you know that the person is a much more advanced or a fresher, then you might realize that it might not be the right piece of content for that individual. And then why would you recommend this content? And which areas of this blog should you ask your colleague to focus their attention on? because everyone is very busy now. So you know that this person is busy in the midst of a deliverable. So you want to say that you know exactly what I've clearly highlighted this section, and this is where the meat is. And then organized, because today when you're curating a content and you will be uploading it some knowledge portal which your organization would have, you would have to put in some hashtags or content, or you put it on Slack. So you also have to associate with some keywords, which if people are searching by those keywords, they'll be able to quickly find this nugget that you have uploaded. So I hope all of you are working on it. Can we just get a yes or no typed on the chat so that we know that you're acting on it? Thank you. So Sumita, it would be great if you can also start working on it. There's no force, of course. So we'll give you another 3 minutes, and then would request one of you to share what is it that you have created. We'll just, if you let us know who's willing to share, then we'll provide you with the share rights. Okay, is anyone ready to share? As he said, it need not be perfect. It's just a small sample prototype. It's a paper prototype that you're creating, because prototypes could be of different kinds. It could be a paper prototype to a working solution. So that's where you know that speed and iteration comes in. Because in fact, in the early stages, we do paper prototypes, quickly show, keep refining, even before we start putting efforts into creating a working prototype. Okay, working on it. So you exactly have another, okay, ready. So Sridhar is ready. So can you give access to Sridhar to share that what he's created?
Sure. I will stop sharing my screen so that we can.
Yeah, let's just give access to Sridhar to quickly share his screen and then show us what he has.
Sridhar, you should have access to share your screen.
So Sridhar, if you could share your work with us, it would be great. Excellent. So could you just zoom it a bit? Okay.
You're able to see?
Yeah, we are able to see.
Okay. So I selected the topic of systematic inventive thinking.
Okay.
The reason for that is it is a great way to explore creative problem solving, which is one
Okay.
of the popular topics which we want to teach our associates.
Okay.
Then comes the recommend. It is a.
You need to scroll down your.
I'm going down. Going
Yeah.
down. It is a practical and implementable technique in a given context, in any given context rather. That's
Okay.
why it is recommended. And the direct, yeah, the 5 different approaches which are there as part of SIT is where the focus should be.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay, thank you so much. So what this gives you is a feel of how a prototype is created. Of course, a lot can go in. Then, in fact, we have a advanced masterclass, a workshop, 20-hour workshop coming in soon, where actually it will be more hands-on and no theory, very little theory. Uh, so where you'll actually get to practice and you would get to refine and fine tune it for you. Thank you so much. So if you can just stop the share and give the rights back to me, it would be great. Thank you so much, Sridhar, for sharing.
It's already stopped, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it stopped. So I'm back. So yes, as I said, there are different type of prototypes. The whole advantage of right from a prototype to advanced prototype is you can create a quick and dirty prototype in a very short time. So even when everyone is in the room, what a working version could look like could be shown to people, and you could get instant feedback because all the different stakeholders would be there in the room, and that's a good way to start doing it. Once you've created a prototype, of course, you need to start testing with the users. And this is one such example of a test script that we have created of how they would log on into a solution. And then you would look at the feedback that you got from different people with whom you tested, where you're, and the key about testing is there are tons of variables that will emerge when you're creating a solution. Uh, in the early stages, it's not possible for you to test all the variables. So you would have to decide what is that variable that you want to test in that prototyping solution while you are doing that. And then you are all set to implement the solution once you have the MVP in place. So then you will have an implementation plan where this is how typically an implementation plan template would look like. What would be the different risk levels it carries? What are the outcomes that you would expect once the MVP is launched, because the final solution is yet to be launched? And then uh, what would this kind of an initiative cost you? And here at this point in time, we're just talking about the internal people cost. Now, there would always be the cost of technology, infrastructure, and other things that needs to come into play. And 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 here is where comes in, um, you know, how do you start measuring the benefits of design? Sridhar, if you could just stop your video for the time being.
All right, it's just not about creating right design. It's also about measuring and showcasing whether the design that we've created is really effective and it is providing us the benefits or the desired results. And while this learning design helps you start from identifying what your business goals are, and then it takes you forward into thinking, what is it? What do people really need to do? What do people need to learn? And what training is required? Right? The measurement process goes in the reverse direction. We start by looking at whether did they really complete the training? Have they learned it? Are people doing what they were expected to do? Are they doing what they have really learned to do? And then measuring and checking whether business goals were really achieved or they were not achieved. Now, very quickly, we'll launch a poll where I would like you guys to tell us what has the measurement of learning will shifted in the last year or so, or has it not shifted? And the poll should come to you You have another 10 seconds. 5 seconds before we end the poll. Three, two, one. Yes. That's the result. About for 46% of us, almost for half the population that we have up to date, it's gone on the back burner. It's got worse. This is essentially the right time when you need to start measuring the impact that the learning is doing, the shift that is happening in the learning program. Because now more than ever, you need to showcase the value that learning brings to the organization. Well, each time when businesses go through a situation like this, when it goes through a pandemic, when it goes through a slowdown, the first thing that we notice happens is that the learning budget, the training budget gets cut. Those are the first budgets that are usually that take a hit. Now, why does that happen? It happens because businesses don't see the value that learning programs bring in. So if we want to get more value or more money into our training programs, we want bigger budget for our training program, the first thing that we need to do is we need to start showcasing the value that the training program bring in. And how do we do that? How do we do that? We do that by using the chain of impact. In the chain of impact, and this is the ROI methodology way that has been created by Jack and Patrick Phillips. They are the founders and CEOs of the ROI Institute and the ROI methodology. They say that we need to show the value in using the chain of impact. At level 0 in the chain of impact are inputs, activities, and outputs. These are basic information with which we start delivering any training program. We will know how many number of trainees we are going to train, what's the training activity that we need to do, whether it needs to be an in-classroom training, whether it needs to be a virtual training, and what's going to be the output of the training. Right? How many people will be trained? What will they learn? And so on. Once we know that, and as we start moving up the chain, the next bit that we do is we start measuring the level 1 reaction and plan action data for the participants. This is a basic information where you see what's the participant reaction, how they feel. Do they see the value in the training that has been delivered? Do they think it is going to be relevant and applicable for the day-to-day job? And what's the planned action that they intend to take at the end of this program? That's what we measure at level 1. We go further and look at level 2. Here we measure what is it that they have actually learned from the program. As part of the program, we would have wanted to make sure that they gain certain learnings. Are those learnings that they have gained? Have they learned those? These are usually done by doing assessments or role plays at the end of the training program. That's not where we stop measuring. Once they have got out of the training, what we measure next is we look at whether they are able to apply and implement the learning. The learning that they gained in the classroom, they showed us that they have learned, that they have showed us that they know the information. Are they able to apply the information? Are they able to apply those skills in their day-to-day activities? Is what we look at level 3. We then look at level 4. Now that they have applied the learnings from the classroom, did it create an impact for the business? We look at what are the tangible impact that it has brought for the business. We look at whether it did result in improvement of time, did it reduce cost, did it help improve quality, various factors that can come out of the training program. What we also do is we start measuring intangibles also over here, and we look at whether there has been improvement in employee performance, is there improvement in employee satisfaction, okay? Do they have better work-life balance? And these are different variables depending on the kind of program that you are creating. That can be measured at a level 4. And finally, it's level 5 where we are looking at the return on investment. This is actually looking at the monetary value that is derived as a benefit from the program. This is capping it to a real dollar value, to a real rupee value, to whatever currency you're using, to that value to see whether the input or whether the cost that we use to deliver the whole program, to deliver the whole journey, whether there has been a return on that or not. All right. Now, these are these are levels of impact, the chain of value that you see from the RS Institute. You have level 0, which is essentially input. Your level 1s and 5s are essentially what gives you the program outcome data. At this point, what I would like you to do is I would like you to get back to menti.com. If you close the window, the code that you need to enter is 701421. If you're still on that window, the next question should come up. What I'd like you to do is share your thoughts about what percentage of learning programs do you measure at each level. And you should be having the questions on your screen now if you are on Menti. The code is 701421. We have about 6 responses. We'll wait for more. There is one that come in. Excellent. We are waiting for another 20 seconds to get everyone to put their information. 15 seconds more. 10, 5, 3, 2, 1, and we are going to close the voting on this one. Right. This gives us an idea that a lot of these programs that we have, we are not really measuring it to the higher level. More than half the programs, we're not even looking at whether it's giving us the right impact for business that we are catering this program. And these are some of the reasons why you will notice that a lot of time when budget cuts need to happen, the first budget that gets cut is for training programs. Now, how do we go about the whole process? How do we go to measuring the business impact and the outcome? So with the 5 levels, then you have a program. We take a program and align it to the business. Okay? Just like we do in a design thinking way. We start right at the top where you see the level 5. Okay? That's the pay of need. What is it that the program needs to give us? What's the business need for the program? Then you start looking at what's the performance needs of the participants in the program. What performance improvement do we want to see? What needs to change? That's what we measure here. Then you start looking at the learning needs. To change that performance, what is the learning that they will need to gain? What is it that they will need to know? Then we look at the preference needs. What's the preference that your participants have? How is it that they prefer to learn? What is it that, how is it that they can learn better? And how is it that the learning that they will get, they will go ahead and apply it as well. And then we come back to the input needs to see how many number of people we need to train, how we deliver training, and so on. And that's the business alignment and forecasting that one needs to do before we start with any program. Okay? Top two levels tell us why is it that we need to do that program, okay? And the remaining levels tell us what's the initial analysis that we're doing. Now, once we've done that, we start creating objectives for each level. We create objectives for the inputs. We look at what are the reaction and planned action objectives that need to be created, what learning objectives have to be created, what objectives need to be created for the application stage. We look at what impact objectives we need to create, and we look at the ROI objectives. It's extremely essential that we create objectives for each of these levels. Because once we've created these objectives, it is against those objectives that we will start measuring the output or outcomes of a particular program. Okay? And that's what you see on the right side of models here. Okay? This is where we do the measurements. These are measurements and evaluations that we do. Very quickly, let me showcase this to you from a case study example that we have. Okay? This is for an organization. The organization's name has been changed because of privacy, but the information that you see is completely true. For that organization, which is Transsoft Inc., we started off with looking at what's the of opportunity. They wanted to see a potential increase in revenue from $1,000 to $3,000 per upgrade made for about 12,000 users, and that would help them maintain competitive advantage. Okay. The business needs was to upgrade their sales to the existing customers. The performance needs was to look at new features, demonstrate how upgrades will give them greater profitability. The learning needs was for the participants to understand what's the rationale behind the upgrade that they are going to sell to their customers. Okay? And the preference was to avoid cost of travel and time of travel. Okay? And this was something that they wanted to make accessible to 200 sales representatives across the US. The objectives, when we started creating objectives, we created those level 1 objectives where we said we wanted to achieve positive reaction on programs where they're looking at programs from a relevant standpoint, from a recommendation standpoint, from an important standpoint. We wanted to make sure that participants feel that program was relevant for them, it was important, and they intended to use. At learning, we said they need to learn to use 5 concepts to sell a new upgrade that they would be selling. At the application level, we said that they should be able to explain the rationale for the upgrade, the 5 concepts that they learned, they should be able to explain those to the consumers that they would be selling those upgrades to. In terms of business impact, we said that the business impact increase needs to happen to $10,000 of sales per month, and participants need to sell the first upgrade within 3 weeks. And we were looking at an ROI of 20% from the program. When we started measuring, okay, these are the typical measurement results that we saw. We saw that our reaction result target was a 4.4, we got a 4.3. A learning result was supposed to be at 20, we got a 20.8. Application results needed to be at a 4.4, we got a 6. Business impact needed to be 10,000 in sales per month. When we looked at the annualized profit that is converted into, it converted into $228,000 on overall annualized profit. And the return on investment was, while the target was 20, we achieved about 311% output or ROI from that particular process. So that's how we do the entire measurement and showcasing how we do measurements and the results that come out of the measurements that we do.
Right. So I got. I hope you all got the importance of measurement. So while we are working on a design project, we closely also work with clients to measure, so that you're aware of the impact that it can create to business. So as a learner experience architect, because that's what, instead of just a process maintainer and developer, Today, L&D professional needs to upgrade himself or herself to a learner experience architect. So it starts with, what does success look for this role, for whom, for whichever role for which you're training, creating this training program. How can the learner experience be measured? What does the learner need to know or do to be successful in their job? What are the learner realities? I mean, what kind of work conditions are they working? Are they working remote, hybrid? Do they travel extensively? So you need to understand all these different dimensions. What is the environment in which this learner is working? How to create a pull for the course? Because while you've understood the learner, it's also important for you to understand that today we are living in an era where if I have a need, I know I can quickly go to a Google, do a search, and find some content for myself, which will possibly fill my learning gap. So if you have to be that one-stop shop where the learner will come to instead of looking outside the organization for external content, then how can you create a pull for this course so that they trust you and they come? So you have to wear the marketer's hat and start looking at ways to attract your audience to yourself. You'll have to look at, how do you curate content? How do you sequence and prioritize the workflow? Because there's always a logical flow. I mean, if we were to do one phase of design thinking before the other, will it work? Yes, if you've started the journey and if you're trying to go back, yes, it could definitely work. But otherwise, no. You can't start from brainstorming without not understanding the user. So there is some flow that you have to maintain. What is the duration of the content delivery and the course? What are the different modality types? Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be hybrid? It is going to be e-learning? How or is it going to be instructor led in person? What is the infrastructure that you require to scale this program, or even to even get the MVP running? How and when do people react with real people? You know, it could be experts, it could be their peers or colleagues from whom they can learn, clarify their doubts, which the learning nugget has still not been able to clarify. How to involve in practice, application, and reflection. So, as a learner architect, for anything that you create, these are all the different aspects that you need to take into account, without which the program will not be successful, or you'd find it very difficult to scale, going forward. I mean, as L&D professionals, all of you would know Ebbinghaus' forgetting curve. Now, using this principle, we say that using design thinking and using this workflow as a learner architect that you would put in place, you would be able to reverse this forgetting curve and you can make learning stick. So the forgetting curve tells us that, once we learn something for 10 minutes, the user will kind of remember everything. But after 24 hours, the percentage of learning drops, and a month down the line, it possibly may come down to 10% or whatever you've learned. So as knowing this way human mind works, so we say, okay, I have taught you something and you've got that, okay, this is relevant for my work. So what I do is, after 24 hours, I send you some kind of a reinforcement material. So I give you a nudge, I send you some, possibly a gamification, a small game that you would play, that would help you repeat the key learnings, what you learned the previous day, help you reflect how you can apply it at your work. A week down the line, I will identify some project for you where you can apply this learning in your work. And several other people have undergone the same learning. You quickly, review with them, share each other's experiences, how is it that they are applying at work, what is it, how is it benefiting, how is the productivity improving, where is it that you're having a problem or you're getting stuck up, and that gets refined. You may also reach out to your coach, your mentor, to help you address bottlenecks. And then a month down the line, we give you a recognition and award. It could be saying, I mean, nowadays, if you see in LinkedIn, there are a lot of updates which comes in, have completed a course completion, issued IBM certificate of having completed XYZ program, or if you've done some course online on a MOOC. So some kind of a recognition which says that, okay, yes, this person has done this program and has successfully shown how to apply it at work. So you're recognizing the time and effort the individual has put into this. In fact, the way we see that you'd be able to reverse this forgetting curve is today you've gone through this masterclass. Uh, we will be sharing the deck with you that would help you with the repetition and reflection of how it can help you. Uh, there are small tools and activities and exercises that are shared in this, uh, so that would help you form a routine. So even if you can try and practice one empathy map for one set of audience, do one persona, learner persona profile, it would give you some kind of a hands-on, and you'll see how it's benefiting you in terms of understanding your learner. You can review with your colleagues, and I'm sure this will help you. Your organization will start seeing a difference when you're working. So just try this, and we would love to hear your feedback a few weeks down the line. So typically, what is the approach anyone would follow? So at the beginning of a program, there's always a preparation phase. So where you recruit this team, which would be the different stakeholders who should be a part of this uh, team, who would be working on the project. What is the work environment? Which it will be virtual, physical, hybrid. What are the other constraints that are there in the environment that with which you have to work with? You would have to also decide your internal ways of working. Who will do what? Like today, like we were putting up this workshop, so we both split our responsibilities, that you will handle the poll, I'll do something, so on and so forth. So similarly, all the different stakeholders would be given different roles and responsibilities depending on the percentage time that they would be actively engaged with the project, because some of them would be available on this project only on a part-time basis, and some might be associated on a full-time basis. So you have to understand those nuances as well. And then it's about designing the workshop, because there are more than 2000 plus design tools that are available out there. Not necessary that every project would require, but in our experience, for an end-to-end design project, if you're using full-blown, we would require at least 60 different design thinking tools that you would need to apply. And it would also vary depending on the maturity of the organization, the maturity of the team which is working, the problem that you're trying to solve, and all that would be decided by the design facilitator. And then what we call as sprints, because we can't do the whole end-to-end project on in one day, because there is data gathering that you have to do, then you have to analyze the data, again you will have to act on it. So there's this continuous convergence and divergence that will keep happening throughout the project. So we would split it into different sprints, which would be the job of the design facilitator who would do that. And then we would create a working prototype, test it, refine it, and reach till a stage where we have the MVP and it's ready to launch. And then, of course, we will look at the bigger launch and put in the infrastructure in place to scale it up. And there might be other features and functionality that you might need to add to it. So all those things would be taken into account. So this would be the typical approach that any organization should follow, and this is how we do it. So as you all are new into design thinking, you'd appreciate that learning design thinking is like learning to ride a bicycle. So today, a lot of you who were new to, you had just heard about design thinking and didn't know what about, today you got exposed to what is design thinking. But as you start, uh, learning to ride a bicycle, there's initially someone to support you. And then when you go independent, you stall, you fall, you stumble, you hurt yourself, then you come back. And that process will go on for some time because you're still in that learner mode. And then you're comfortable with few set of tools and techniques and a particular kind of a problem set, and then you become a practitioner, and then you start advocating to people because you see the results, and you start talking about the success story that you've achieved with design. And then you can decide to take the next leap to become a facilitator, because for becoming a facilitator, it's important that you should have worked on at least multiple end-to-end design projects before you can you can play the role of a facilitator. And you need to have mastery of at least 60, 70 design tools. You should have facilitation skills, which shouldn't be a problem for a learning and development professional, because uh, all of you are good master facilitators. In fact, someone like me has to come and learn from you. I'm sure there would be a lot of useful nuggets that you could pass on to us. But yes, a facilitator requires additional skills that you need to build in, or you could just be happy being a practitioner. So that depends on your need, your interest as a learner. So as I said, at the end of the activity, we would do a small reflection activity. I wish. So now there are a lot of things that so in the last, uh, almost 2 hours, there are a lot of things that you heard, listened. Now there are certain things that you liked, certain things you wish for, and there are certain things it would have triggered. Okay, how could you do something using whatever you've learned. So if you could share this in the chat screen, I wish, and how to do, uh, uh, it would be nice. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions to us. Okay. Thanks, Sumita. So, in fact, we have an answer to that as well. Starting March 20th, 2021 to April 17th, for 5 weeks, every Saturday, we have a program coming up called Reimagining L&D Capabilities, Driving Continuous Consumer-Centric Learning, where you'll go more deeper into the design tools and learn how to actually practice those tools. Where 80% of the workshop will be hands-on, and this program would help you in different ways. Uh, uh, we would also share the brochure with you, which you can take a look at. And for all the people who participated today in this master class, we have sign up. Maybe Homzad, you can explain the pricing piece to them, how it works.
20-hour program that we are starting on 20th of March, okay, which is reimagining. Uh, Sorry about that. Okay. It's reimagining L&D capabilities and driving consumer-centric learning. This program is globally valued at about 75,000 rupees or at about $1,000 internationally. So what we are doing is we are bringing this program to you for just one third of that amount at about 33% of the cost, that is 25,000. But that's not what we are giving this to you at today. For a limited time, we are giving this program or making this program available to everyone at a cost of 14,999 Indian rupees. And that gives you close to about say 80% savings on the original cost of the program. If you are interested in this 20-hour program that we have, you can book your seat on the link that's shown on your screen, or you can just scan the QR code that's there. But that's not all that we have to offer for you, because you all have been such wonderful participants today, and you took your time out on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and stayed with us for this duration of 2 hours. We are giving you another extra 10% discount only for Masterclass class participants. Okay? You, all you need to do is on that link, when you get to that link, you lock your seat, use the code DTS first, and it will reduce 10% of the fee. Remember, the prices that we mentioned here are exclusive of taxes, and this code is valid only till 11:59 p.m. Indian Standard Time on the 1st of March.
So if you have any questions, we are free to take. I mean, those who have any questions can stay back, uh, uh, and we are here to answer any questions. You can unmute yourself. You can always reach out to both of us anytime. Here are our coordinates. And as we promised, the deck will be shared with you with the details. And we look forward to seeing some of you uh, in the main workshop, because you all got excited, I'm sure, with whatever you saw out here. But it's important that you start getting deeper. You've just got the 30,000 feet overview about what design thinking is, what is, how it can be measured, etc. But to go deeper, you need to start, investing in your own self by learning. And uh, 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 and uh, so yes, any questions, please feel free to ask us. And as Edward Deming said, a very favorite quote of mine, uh, learning is not compulsory, neither is survival. Today we all know, in this digital era, how difficult it is to survive and thrive. So yes, Any questions, please?
It doesn't look like we have any questions.
Okay, so thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it. Once more, we're just asking in case there are any questions. Whoever is there, Rima, Mikhail, Reeds, Alan, please feel free to unmute yourself, ask your questions, or else we will to all of you. And I hope that the session gave you a good overview, because there are a lot of programs out there which gives you an overview of what design thinking is all about. Uh, our intent is to customize it for every learner type. So we ensure so that it's easier for you to understand in your working context. Otherwise, it's very easy to give out the concept and empty, define, ideate, prototype, test, implement. But any questions, any thoughts, any feedback that you would like to share to us, because we keep running these 2-hour master classes on a regular basis. If there's something that we need to work on and improve, um, we would love your inputs, because you are our customers and audience. So we need your feedback so that we can improve as well. So any questions, please? Okay, so thanks. Looks like everyone 6 o'clock Saturday evening doesn't want to spend time with us. So let's call this
Yes, let's not keep
call the
everyone.
session in. Let's not keep you waiting. Thank you so much for your time once again. We loved having you on the session. I hope each one of you gained something and you found the 2 hours that you invested, like as Indians would say, it 100% paisa vasool. You know, value for money, value for your time. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for being with us today, and we hope